from scrutiny and securing victory through the shadows of disputed elections. According to a Sudanese-British philanthropist here, Mohammed Ibrahim, he says banning opposition parties, shutting the internet and shooting at demonstrators, most of them young people, an election that excludes the opposition cannot be considered legitimate. Those were not Tanzania's protest, walikuwa watu wa nchi nyingine, according to the president of Tanzania. This story has been covered on page 8, 9, and 10, 4 pages dedicated to what is happening in Tanzania. Tuangalie ndani. And page 8, 9, 10. I was looking at page 4. Suluhu sworn into office without cheering crowds and songs of unity. The event was conducted at restricted military grounds in Dodoma, accessible only to invited guests. Absent were ordinary Tanzanians, including the 32 million said to have voted for Suluhu in last Wednesday's election.
There was more security officers and guests. Walikuwa tu ni askari jeshi kila mahali.
Hao ndio walipiga kura, the 98%. In this region, a congratulatory message is never just a message, it's a signal. When leaders delay or keep their words short, they're sending a message of discomfort. That is an East African diplomat quoted here. And once again, that story, Samia blames foreigners for chaos amid regional snub. Amid bloodshed and political turmoil, President Samia took oath in a secluded Dodoma ceremony. The military-dominated inauguration reflected rising tension and fear as Tanzanians reel from post-election bloodshed. And she's quoted here, she said, "I'm saddened by the violence that hit our cities and towns, but it is not surprising because some of the youths arrested are from outside
What is she
Tanzania."
suggesting? What is she
Tunajua lakini hatutasema.
Anasema ni nani walienda huko, surely. Ati sio wa huko.
Sio wa huko, lakini tunajua ni nani
anajua. Hapana, nafikiri watu wanaelewa mambo mengi. Yaani we already feeling guilty now, we didn't do anything.
We are rogue. Big brother amesema, okay. From Gabon to Tanzania, what election numbers say about Africa? There's another story there on page 10. On page 2, retired Air Force officer wants JSC to remove Koome over misconduct. School principal goes missing after KCSE exam malpractice. And this is it Mary Shaw? But let's just be sure about it. It's a school in Kajiado County has been thrown into controversy after his principal went missing following allegations of examination malpractice during the ongoing Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education. All right, on the back page, Alonso shaping new Real Madrid on Liverpool return. Elegant on the ball, Alonso was the brains of Liverpool's midfield between 2004 and 2009. The 15-time European champions beat Clasico rivals Barcelona last weekend. That's the standard this morning.
All right.
Tuendelee
tu na magazeti. Tutaangalia masuala ya anga baadaye. It's the same story on the front page of Taifa Leo. Masuala what's happening in Tanzania. Suluhu anasema wageni walileta fujo Tanzania. Marais wa EAC Afrika Mashariki jana walisusia kuapishwa kwa Suluhu, alidai vijana walioshiriki ghasia walikuwa wageni. Yaani hakuna hata rais mmoja wa Kenya hakwenda, wa Uganda hakwenda, wa Rwanda hakwenda, wa DRC pia hakuwepo. Walituma maybe naibu wao, lakini yule wa Somalia alikuwa na wa Zambia. So anasema rais wa Tanzania Samia Suluhu jana aliwalaumu watu kutoka nje kwa kuhusika na maandamano ya kupinga kuandaliwa na matokeo ya uchaguzi, huku akitoa wito wa umoja kwa minajili ya udhabiti wa nchi. Akizungumza wakati wa kuapishwa kuhudumu muhula wa pili, Samia alisikitika vurugu zilizotokea Tanzania, akirai wananchi na umma kudumisha amani na kumakinikia ujenzi wa taifa hilo. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa pili. Lakini sasa ni kama vile wanasema Watanzania hawawezi izoa vurugu. Au hawajui masuala ya fujo. And you remember just a few months before this and when Kenya was going through a bit of turmoil, they kept on saying, and even they discussed it in parliament, that musilete hizo tabia zenyu mbaya huku. Hizo ni tabia za Wakenya. So sasa akisema ni sio watu wa Tanzania, sisi tunachukulia ni sisi wanasema nini? Kidole cha lawama, anatuonyesha kidole cha lawama. Samia Suluhu Hassan pale. Kwingineko, janga la maporomoko kule Elgeyo Marakwet. Kuna picha pale chini, wakazi wa kijiji cha Kimpenda, Keyo Kaskazini, kaunti ya Elgeyo Marakwet, wakiwa jana katika eneo ambapo mwanamke na mjukuu wake walifariki na mjukuu mwingine kujeruhiwa kufuatia maporomoko yaliyosababishwa na mvua kubwa iliyoshuhudiwa. This has been witnessed on both sides of the border between Kenya and Uganda, areas around Mount Elgon, Elgeyo Marakwet and such. And for 4 days now, landslides have been witnessed there, and they've been very destructive. And the death toll has risen to almost 30 on the Kenyan side so far. Vidokezo zaidi kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa gazeti hili la Taifa Leo. Pale juu anasema upinzani wa hapa kutwaa viti vya chaguzi ndogo. Viongozi hao walisisitiza wataibuka na mgombeaji mmoja wa urais. Kuna picha pale ambao ni viongozi wa upinzani, Rigathi Gachagua, Kalonzo na Eugene Wamalwa pamoja na wengineo. Masuala ya spoti, Ken apiga hesabu ya kuyoyomea Barcelona, na kuna habari mingi zaidi za michezo ndani ya gazeti hili la Taifa Leo.
Let's take a look at the People Daily. How coalition politics shapes Kenya's future destiny, and examining how shifting political alliances are redefining power and policy in Kenya. This is in page 4. Nasema hata ukiwa rais, you cannot do it alone. Lazima ufanye ka handshake pale ka broad-based government so that you can at least do something with your government.
I think for pre-election, I think there's a complication in the provisions in our constitution. Only a mambo ya 50% plus one. It means that very few people can actually get to that. And chances of anyone getting 50% plus one without forming a coalition, almost impossible. Because previously, ilikuwa too simple majority. Anyone can, okay, fine, itakuwa first past the post, but 50% plus one, not so easy. Coalitions are very necessary.
So how coalition politics shapes Kenya's future is a story on page 4. Gen Z and the end of business as usual for the ruling class. That story is on page 5. On the top strip, Kenya 2027, a nation on the age of change. Tuangalie kidogo wanaongelea nini. Anasema shifting suns as Uhuru revamps Jubilee ahead of 2027 election rumble. And entry of former Interior Secretary Fred Matiang'i in presidential race adds a new layer of confusion as political party leaders engage. A nation on the age of change because of Matiang'i. This story is on page 7. Lakini Oburu Oginga alisema Matiang'i has no weight. Let's see.
Right. That story about the landslides in Elgeyo Marakwet features prominently on the front page of the Daily Nation this morning. Buried alive, and is a sad state of affairs. They say the death toll has so far risen to 30 as the state reveals 14 learners among the victims. 14 learners, that means they were in school. Disaster for residents of some villages in hilly Elgeyo Marakwet County. The events of the last 4 days are straight out of a horror movie. One moment they are full of life, sharing evening meals before going to bed. The next they lie either lifeless or injured under heaps of soil and huge rocks. Their homes swallowed by the ground or pounded flat. And this, you can imagine umelala tu alafu ground in a shift. Yeah. Something just happens and kidogo, you're home and yourself, you're just buried underneath these heaps of soil. That's a very sad state of affairs. And of course, our hearts go out to the people of Elgeyo Marakwet. And as we said earlier, this phenomenon is happening on both sides of the Kenya and Ugandan borders. And you have different pictures there of residents meeting yesterday at a home in Kipkenda village, Keyo North, Elgeyo Marakwet, where a woman and her grandson died following a mudslide on Sunday night. Tuangalie, because it's been given prominence on pages 2 and 3. And some of them say that it happened so fast. At one moment they were in deep slumber because they were asleep. It happened at night after a day of hard work, but the next they lay lifeless, buried under heaps of soil that flowed downhill. And then pictures there of massive rocks that have destroyed homes, and locals now conducting the rescue and retrieval of bodies from underneath the heaps of soil. And a picture there of the Elgeyo Marakwet Governor, Wesley Rotich, Keyo North MP Adams Kisanai, and Acting County Commissioner Julius Mayo joining residents in that rescue and retrieval mission under the title Tragedy in the Valley. Back to the front page, and yes, they make mention of what's happening in Tanzania. Samia sworn into office in private ceremony, and it's a very interesting photo there on the top strip of this paper of the president now walking. Now, ukiangalia the amount of security around the president, and they were actually in a military base. No members of the public were allowed in there. It was just international guests, a few diplomatic leaders, or members of the diplomatic corps na majeshi, lakini bado wanahitaji security ya watu kama 50 na 300. Hey.
Mama lazima alindwe.
Mama lazima alindwe. Acha alindwe kabisa. That story is also given prominence on pages 4 and 5 under the headlines, My Brush with Death in Tanzania. This is one of the observers, Liza Dundo Yogo, who was in Tanzania to try and observe the elections. Hiyo nyingine, Samia takes office in private ceremony, and they also note that Ruto and Museveni skipped that event. So those are the main stories. Of course, kule ndani maswala ya exams pia inapata CS cautions cheats as Form 4 exams begin countrywide. They keep on saying begin. Hizi exams ilianza kitambo. Kwani practical si exam? Ni kama ilianza jana na ile English paper 1. Leo ni mathematics paper 1 asubuhi. Saa hii, I tell you. Hii ndio ile siku watu hujua. Wakileta ile calculus na English paper 2 baadaye. Okay, let's go to the back page of this paper. This is a Daily Nation. Nairobi United eyes quarters against Morocco and Congolese opponents. That's the main story. Matters CAF Confederation Cup. Kenyan representatives play wide at Casablanca on November 23rd. And that's the Daily Nation this morning.
All right. The Star, Gachagua to back Kalonzo, Natembeya and Matiang'i lineup. XDP won't run for president but will get 50% of Kalonzo government. This story is on page 6. It says, according to sources close to Gachagua, the former DP will not run for presidency but instead will receive 50% of Kalonzo's government should they succeed in defeating President William Ruto in the upcoming election. And an MP from central Kenya, familiar with the negotiations, remarked the deal is done and sealed. In this arrangement, Trans Nzoia Governor George Natembeya is expected to serve as Kalonzo's running mate, while Fred Matiang'i is slated for the position of Prime or Chief Minister. Interesting. Further political alignments include Eugene Wamalwa, who is earmarked for the role of Speaker of the National Assembly, and Martha Karua, who may take on the role of Senate Speaker if she does not secure the Kirinyaga gubernatorial seat. This coalition-building effort involves a select group of individuals, including Gachagua, Kalonzo, and a trusted lawyer tasked with drafting a power-sharing agreement in preparation for
So according to that story, Gachagua has no position in any of this. Yeye bora tu ako na nusu ya serikali.
50%.
As who?
As a shareholder.
But without any post. Okay, interesting.
And they make mention of another story here on page 7, how Raila exit could boost Gachagua and Kalonzo in 2027. Analysts say Ruto will not automatically inherit the former premier's political basis. All right, other quick headlines here. Prioritize health workers with HIV vaccine lobby. That story is on page 2. Lodoman jailed 26 years for killing lover over HIV medication use.
Interesting story there.
Page 3. Eden inflicted fatal head injuries on Ekatorot on December 16, 2022. Students take the lead in tackling beach pollution in Malindi. Kuleju, will Raila influence 2027 elections from his grave?
I can answer you that one. Definitely he will.
He will.
He will.
Fresh, independent and different, being a Tuesday, the Star is not for sale today.
Yes, and it comes with a complimentary MyGov pull-out for government tenders and job opportunities. Grab yourself a copy of this paper. Leo sijui kwa nini wanaweka bei, sababu anasema it's not for sale. Hawafai kuweka hiyo ati ukiwa Tanzania. Tanzania sasa hivi wana shida mingi hata hawezi nunua gazeti.
The Star.
All right, let's take a look at the Business Daily. John Mbadi on the front page today. Mbadi sparks Consolidated Bank CEO director's ouster. So Treasury CS John Mbadi has ousted the board and the CEO of Consolidated Bank of Kenya in changes that have caught the attention of the regulator and triggered a court battle. The boardroom coup followed Mr. Mbadi's rejection of the director's decision to offer the bank's chief executive officer, Sam Muturi, a second term from October 11th. Now, that's the story there. Treasury CS rejects board bid to renew CEO's term, and the CBK advises against picking replacement before vetting. There's a dispute here, and it's a family dispute. Monga's wife blocks auction of 640 million Britam shares. The High Court has handed businessman Peter Monga a reprieve after stopping a bank from auctioning his 75 million shares in Britam Insurance. The injunction came after his wife, Rose Jambi, objected to the planned sale, arguing that the shares constitute matrimonial property and cannot be disposed of without her consent. And that's an interesting thing, because Peter Monga is a very wealthy person. And kama koti imesema mali yake ifanywe hivi, mke anakuja sasa, hiyo si mali yake peke yake. Hata mimi niko na shares hapa. That's matrimonial property. Simamisha hapo, koma kabisa. Muende muuze yake. Hii yenye mimi pia niko na shares, wacha kwanza. Yeah. And of course, they also make mention of what's happening in Tanzania. A picture there of Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan being sworn in for a second term yesterday, and a cloud of controversy. On the ticker, payment switch farms exempted from VAT in tribunal decision. That's the KRA has been barred from collecting 16% VAT from firms that link banks, mobile money operators, and payment service providers. And elsewhere, KCB expands fintech investments with Pesapal stake. That's the Business Daily.
All right.
Once again, a reminder of our panel this morning: James Gakuya, MP Embakasi North; Harrison Kenyanjui, Advocate of the High Court; former nominated Senator Gloria Oroba; and political commentator Mesha Kodede. These are the people who will be in studio in a few minutes to help us look at the big headlines and the big conversations this morning.
All right, the silent threat of thyroid disorders in Kenya will be a conversation that I will be having later on with John Deity, the General Manager, Kenya, Nigeria at MAC. Tuangalie caricature.
Wanazungumzia nini kwenye caricature leo?